Alright, well, I said that it all had to happen within 50 days of Tebeth 21, 2017, which was the late 2NC Pentecost, the end of the 2NC alienation times for the Lord's witnesses, which was the result of going back 7 times from 2010, Tebeth 21, when we were appointed over the Gentile call 2NCs, which was going up. And that was a no-show date, and then Elijah tells the attendant, go back 7 times, which he does. And then it came about on the 7th time, it says, that he saw this cloud. And this is a generalized Pentecost, because there's a no-show is the 0th Sabbath. Going back 7 times is 7 more Sabbaths, because the late 2NC Pentecost is a festival Sabbath, a participating festival Sabbath. If you participate in it, it becomes a Sabbath for you. But I had not fully appreciated how to interpret the Leviticus 23 verse 15 and 16 definition of a Pentecost, which says you should count 7 Sabbaths. Then it says to the day after the 7th Sabbath you should count 50 days. Now normally when the 7 Sabbaths are weekly Sabbaths, the day after the 7th Sabbath is the 50th day, starting from first fruits, which is the day after the first Sabbath. That isn't the case when you've got 7 festival Sabbaths rather than 7 weekly Sabbaths. There is no 50 count of the 7 festival Sabbaths. So in order to count 50 days to the day after the 7th Sabbath, you have to actually count 50 more for whole days to get a 50 count in, because you don't have a 50 count by virtue of the first 7 Sabbaths. There's nothing from them. There's 7 years in the case of festival Sabbaths generally, or there might be some other period depending on how you've defined your Sabbaths, but it won't in general be 50 days. And when it isn't, in order to get 50 days, you have to count 50 days ending on a Pentecost starting from the 7th Sabbath. And you can't just add 50 days, because you won't end up on a Pentecost. And this is about a super or generalized Pentecost. So what you do is you have to count a whole Pentecost after going back 7 times. That's what I hadn't appreciated. So rather than it occurring within 50 days of going back 7 times, it actually has to happen after 50 days of going back 7 times, and not dead on 50 days unless there happens to be a Pentecost right at the end of the 7 times, which there isn't. So that was mistake number 1. I hadn't appreciated that you need a whole Pentecost count, a 50 count indeed, to the day which will be the super Pentecost. You count a 50 count after having gone back to the 7 Sabbaths, which 50 count does not include any of the 7 Sabbaths, because they don't any longer make a 50 count or make 49 count. But not only did I get that wrong, but this idea of we became Assyrian when we got the warning bombs wrong is incorrect, because we weren't predicting warning bombs. We were predicting a US bomb and then a UK bomb. The warning bombs were just guides towards our predictions. And I didn't write to the Watchtower saying there's going to be a warning bomb. I said there's going to be a bomb that blows you up, which wasn't correct. But it still would have been very close to them had they still been in what they still are in New York, I think, to some extent. So we did not become Assyrian on 2006 ER21 when our first warning bomb prediction failed for a bomb at an unknown location, which was just supposed to be a warning that there would be the main bomb in the US. And neither did we become Assyrian when the second warning bomb prediction failed. We became Assyrian when our main first US bomb prediction failed on Sivan 12. And we didn't become Assyrian until it had failed at the end of Sivan 12. So the 0th Sabbath for the Assyrian Pentecost count is Sivan 12, 2006. And if you count 84, straight BLC, 50 counts from there, which is 4,200 days, BLC, you end up on Shabbat 12, 2017. Now that wasn't a fast time, because that isn't the 50 count to Shabbat 12 starts before Tebeth 21. But if you then count the 85th Assyrian Pentecost from Shabbat 12 as the 0th Sabbath, you get to Nisan 2. And that 50 count from Shabbat 12 to Nisan 2, I mean inclusively is from Shabbat 13 to Nisan 2. But from Sabbath, the Sabbath is Shabbat 12, 0th Sabbath. This is just a BLC count, so it's a virtual Sabbath. And then the 50th day is Nisan 2. That is the 85th Asheraian Pentecost, and the entirety of that Pentecost that is after Tebeth 21. So we now think that Nisan 2, which is today, because we're past sunset, is the fulfillment of, well, it is the fulfillment of 1 Kings 18. And then going back to 2 Kings 1, we're back on a inclusive chief. I mean, the definition of a Pentecost generally is that a 50 count is 7 Sabbaths, followed by a chief, if you like, or by one more, which is over the 7 Sabbaths. So it's intrinsically got an inclusive chief in it. And the 50 count that you count actually has virtual Sabbaths. It has 7 sevens and a 1. So Nisan 2 is the inclusive chief of the 85th Asheraian Pentecost from the 2 Kings 1 standpoint. And then the Baalian Pentecost, that still counts from 2005 ER14, the fall of the Watchtowers of True Church. But since we're counting BLC now, we count that BLC, 50 BLC days. And it runs from Shabbat 24 as the 0th Sabbath to Nisan 14, 2018 as the Pentecost, which is coincident with the Laodicean Pentecost from Shabbat 19, which counts in solar days, to Nisan 14, whereas the Baalian Pentecost counts in BLC days. Now, if you were to count the Asheraian Pentecost in solar days rather than in lunar days, then the 86th solar Pentecost is actually Nisan 1, 2018, which we've just had, which wasn't a fulfillment in the UK. So we're counting them lunar to Nisan 2. So our new prediction is for the second fire sign of 1 Kings 18 to occur on Nisan 2, 2018, which is March 1920, Monday, March the 19th, Tuesday, March the 20th, and then the third fire sign to occur Nisan 13 or 14, because it could happen on the 7th Sabbath of the actually 93rd Baalian Pentecost, which runs from Shabbat 24, 2017 to Nisan 14, 2018. And that's Nisan 13 or 14, the 7th Sabbath being Nisan 13. And that's March 30, which is actually the Sabbath. That's Friday, March the 30th, Saturday, March the 31st, or Sunday, April the 1st, which is the Passover. So that takes us right up to Passover. Now, there's one other possibility, which is that you should count everything in weekly Sabbaths, a weekly Sabbath count. If you do that, then the 77th weekly Sabbath counted Asheraian Pentecost from 2006 to 2012 is Nisan 7, 2018, which I think is too late for the second fire sign, because it would blow Esther, and it would blow to Chronicles 3:2, which says that on the second day, although you don't know whether it's festival or Sabbath or regular, of the second month of the 4th regnal year of Solomon, they start building the temple. Also, it would mean that it would be impossible to baptize Jonah, who's Thomas, in time for him after 7 days of installation to be able to baptize anybody for the Passover, which wouldn't be good. I suppose you could get around it. I could baptize people and he could do it for the next Passover, but that's the way it's supposed to work. So just be aware, I've put it on the site, there is this possibility of Nisan 7 for something. I mean, maybe that's the third fire sign, although why you'd have two different ways of counting the same Pentecost, one as a BLC 50 count, straight 50 count, the other in weekly Sabbaths, I don't really know. But it is a possibility, shall we say, a Nisan 7 day, or Nisan 6, which would be literally the 7th weekly Sabbath of the 77th Pentecost. The reason I'm interested in it is it says it came about on the 7th, and Nisan 7 is obviously the 7th. Secondly, the 77th weekly Sabbath counted Pentecost is very cute because that's a success to failure time. So if it isn't happening on Nisan 2, which is today, then the next date would be Nisan 7. Nisan 6 is Friday, March the 23rd, Saturday, March the 24th. And Nisan 7 is Saturday, March 24th, Sunday, March 25th. So if it doesn't happen today, Nisan the 2nd, Monday, Tuesday, March 1920, Then it will happen Friday, Saturday, Sunday, this weekend coming, March 23, 24, 25, the second fire sign. And then the third fire sign would be the Nisan 13, Nisan 14 date. Right, so that's how we correct our 1 Kings 18, our super Pentecost. It has to be a full 50 count after going back 7 times, which has to end at a Pentecost, Baalian, Asheraian or divine. The Laodicean Pentecost is entirely beginning Shabbat 19, it is entirely after Tebeth 21, 2017, so that's fine. And the 2 Kings 1, we've gone back to an inclusive chief of the 50 count. Thanks very much.